Ranger fans are excited about the future of Gabe Perreault, but today we are debating whether he should start in the NHL or the AHL.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blueshirts fans, to episode number 1349 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So today I thought it would be kind of a fun activity to take a look into the not too distant future of Ranger hockey, and that would, of course, be in the form of Gabe Perreault. Highly touted, heralded, first-round draft pick from a couple of seasons ago. Obviously, a very accomplished collegiate career at BC, and turned pro with the Rangers, playing in 5 games with the Blueshirts last year, which pretty much leads us to now. And it leads us into this debate of whether we should have Gabe Perreault start this upcoming season with the Rangers or with the Hartford Wolfpack. And first of all, right off the bat here, let me just acknowledge the fact that the person that's going to determine this, probably more than anybody else, is Gabe Perreault himself. I think the way things stand right now, he is facing a little bit of an uphill battle to make the opening night roster, but we've been surprised before. And the Rangers, for better or worse, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but they do let their younger players play in the NHL if they, earn that opportunity. We've seen multiple examples of that over the years. Bottom line, though, whether he's in the NHL or the AHL, I don't think anything should be set in stone just yet. And I do think Perreault himself is the one that should have the most to say about where he begins this upcoming season. But what I'm going to do here is go ahead and make a case for Gabe Perreault starting the season with the Rangers, and also a case against him starting the season with the New York Rangers. And then we'll have a verdict at the end. For starters, the case for Gabe making the team. To begin with, the New York Rangers, they need a jolt. They need a shot of energy. They need some infusion of life and excitement. And anybody who watched this team last season knows what I'm talking about. And I realize this team did make some changes. Obviously, the big pickup is Vladislav Gavrikov. They move on from Chris Kreider. They move on from K'Andre Miller. They seem to be looking to maybe turn the reins over to some of these young players, Gabe Perreault included. And with all that in mind, the idea of this exciting, dominant college player joining your ranks right at the start of this upcoming season. I've mentioned this in the past, but Ranger fans were so desperate last season, myself included, to find anything about this team that was entertaining, fun, cool, exciting. There was very, very little of that. Gabe Perreault has a chance to be exactly that. And again, even just from a hockey perspective, forget about the entertainment factor. He can clearly help this team and give them the jolt that they need. Another reason is that, in terms of him potentially making the team, there could actually be a spot for him in the top 9 right now. I want no part of Gabe Perreault playing on the 4th line. I don't think he should play there a single shift for his entire career. He just isn't that type of player, and that's completely fine. When you draft somebody in the first round, typically you're not looking for them to become, a career 4th liner, and Perreault is no exception to that rule. But when you look at this Ranger team right now, and you look at the depth chart, and you try to figure out who's going to play with who, and who's going to be on what line, and what position is this guy going to be at, the area of this team, at least to me, and you guys can let me know what you think, but the area of this team that seems to be the most unsettled right now would be the 3rd line. And that being the case, I feel like Perreault can, should, and will be given every opportunity to at least compete for a job there. Because when you think about the Rangers' 3rd line, it could really be any combination of Hoffman, Berard, Perreault. Those are the 3 young homegrown forwards for the Rangers. Parsonen, he'll be in the mix. Johnny Brodzinski as well. Taylor Radish, who they just picked up in free agency. I think certainly, I would think he'd be on the 4th line, but you never know for sure. He could slot in on the 3rd line. Maybe even Adam Edstrom. Maybe that's a little bit of a stretch right out of the gate, but that's at least a possibility as well. So that's very fluid. And when you look at that group of players that I just mentioned, very clearly the one with the highest upside, the highest ceiling is Gabe Perreault. So there's that to consider as well. And the third reason, as far as why he, maybe should make the team, I hinted at it right at the start of the episode a couple of minutes ago here. If he earns it, he earns it. It's as simple as that. If he lights it up in training camp, and I think he's going to play in that 2-game rookie set against the Flyers, if he does well there, and he looks good in the preseason, and he looks like he's locked and loaded and ready to go, then okay, like who am I to say that, oh, this kid, no, he can't possibly be on the Rangers. If he absolutely lights it up and gives the Rangers no choice, then so be it. He will have earned his spot, and we take it from there. And then if there's ever a situation where you feel like he could benefit from a short spell with the Wolfpack, you can always send him down at that point. But if he earns it, he earns it. Simple as that. Here's the case against Gabe making the team, and I'm kind of still leaning this way, at least for now. For starters, the first reason, I think Perreault playing in the AHL with the Hartford Wolfpack, that would serve as a very nice bridge between college hockey and pro hockey. And I know that technically he already made that jump last year straight from college hockey to the NHL, going from BC to the New York Rangers and playing in 5 games with the Rangers at the end of last season. But be that as it may, I mean, okay, that's his small taste of NHL action. Now let's work on bridging him from college to the NHL. We've heard many times in the past, I've talked about it, you've probably talked about it, other people have talked about it, what an enormous jump it is to go even just from the AHL to the NHL. I mean, they're both pro hockey, but there's nothing like the NHL, and I think we all know and understand that. But with that in mind, it's that much more of a jump going straight from college hockey to the NHL. I'm not saying nobody can possibly hope to succeed in such a scenario. I'm not saying even that Gabe Perreault can't possibly hope to succeed in such a scenario. I just like the idea of maybe playing it a little bit safe. Let's get him some seasoning in the AHL with the Wolfpack, even if it's only 15 or 20 games, have that bridge between college hockey and the NHL. Second reason, as far as maybe him not making the team, I like the idea of just sort of waiting until you kind of see the lay of the land with the Rangers. If you're Mike Sullivan, if you're the member of the coaching staff, you just kind of see how everything is going. Okay, who's playing with who, figuring out, what makes this team tick and what's going to work and what's not going to work. And then as the season progresses, again, even as few as like 15 or 20 games, once you find a spot for Gabe Perreault and you say, okay, you know what, we're going to put him on the wing with this line, and this is who he's going to play with, and we're going to give him some time on the second power play. Once you've ID'd a specific role for him, that's when you strike. That's when you call him up. I don't want to see a situation where he's on the roster and he's just sort of there. Gabe Perreault, or anybody taken in the first round for that matter, early in their career, should never be just there, right? They should have, important roles. If they're going to be on the team, they need to be given, good amount of ice time and be on the ice and contribute in a meaningful way. Not be on the fourth line playing 6 or 7 minutes a night. Certainly not watching from the press box every other game. We don't want to see that. So wait until you figure out a big-time role that he can step into, and then that's when you make the call. That's when you bring him up from the Hartford Wolfpack. And hopefully at that time, he's dominating in the AHL, and he's ready to go himself. That would be, I think, a perfect scenario for Perreault and the Rangers. Another reason, and I've kind of alluded to this a little bit already, but how about just building confidence in the AHL? I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but, you could get a feel for how he's going to do with the Wolfpack. You could see how it goes. If he's out there and he's skating circles around people and he's lighting it up, obviously that's going to build his confidence. And at that point, Perreault would be that much more ready to go in the NHL. Now, I have no doubts. I'm sure Gabe Perreault is not lacking for confidence. He's been a great hockey player his entire life. I'm sure his goal going into training camp is to make the Rangers. I believe he even already said that in an interview, and good for him. That's how it should be. But I also think that he could certainly benefit from building up his confidence a little bit against some lesser competition. There's going to be more ice time available with the Hartford Wolfpack for Perreault than there will be initially with the New York Rangers. Certainly there's going to be more power play time. I would be shocked, with the Wolfpack if Perreault wasn't immediately put into the top 6 and the top power play. I mean, throw him out there on the PK every once in a while with the Wolfpack. Why not? Just experiment a little bit. Let him work on every aspect of his game. And if there's ever a situation, I don't really see Perreault as a penalty killer, but you never know. I mean, we've been surprised by that before, and you can just let him hone every single part of his craft in the AHL and build his confidence in so doing. So that's another reason. And one more reason that I'll throw out there, and this one to me isn't quite as important as the ones I just mentioned, but when Gabe gets called up to the Rangers, like say he starts with the Wolfpack and eventually they make the call, at that point, somebody on the Rangers NHL roster is going to have to go. They're either going to get sent down to the AHL or put on waivers, or both, if they get waived and then clear waivers and then go to the AHL. The one way around that would be if Perreault was called up and the Rangers decided to carry 14 forwards at that point instead of 13. But they've rarely done that in recent history. So I'm not really looking for that to happen at this time. for the purposes of, trade deadline, cap space accrual, and whatnot. I don't think they're going to carry 14 forwards. So if we operate under the assumption that somebody will lose his spot once Gabe Perreault is called up, well, 15 or 20 games into the season, you now have an idea of which players in the Rangers are overachieving, which ones are underachieving. Can we trade this guy? Does this guy not really have a spot? What do we want to do here? And at that point, everybody's gotten a chance to really stake their claim to solidifying a spot on the Ranger roster. And then when you call up Gabe Perreault, it's like, all right, well, so-and-so, you're getting sent down or you're getting waived because you're not as good as the other forwards that we have. I mean, I hate to be that blunt about it, but that's basically, what it would be. So as far as like a verdict here, for all the reasons I just mentioned, give me Gabe Perreault. Only has to be 15 or 20 games. Give me him in the AHL to start the season. I get the feeling I'm probably in the minority here. I know there's a lot of Ranger fans that are really excited about Perreault and they can't wait to see what he can do. And, he debuted last year, so why not just throw him out there this year? And you might be able to talk me into that. We'll see how everything goes throughout training camp, throughout the preseason, like I was mentioning. But again, I just think that the best way to go here, and honestly, the safest way to go, and I don't mind that either because the Rangers have not had the best, run of success when it comes to their prospects. The best way to go for Gabe Perreault and his development is a short stint with the Wolfpack, and then you call him up. By no means do I think that Gabe Perreault should not be a Ranger by, say, the midway point of this upcoming season. But you start him in the AHL, you get him ready to go, and hopefully he dominates, and he's ready to do the same thing once the Rangers call him up to the NHL. So in just a second, I'm going to keep everything rolling here. I want to shift our attention to a free agent the Rangers signed during the free agency period. Once that began, how long ago was that at this point? A little less than a week ago, a week and a half ago, something like that. I don't know. This all blends together at a certain point. But bottom line, we're going to talk about a free agent. It's going to be 31-year-old defenseman Derrick Pouliot. Talk about what his role is going to be with the Ranger organization and if he's got any chance of making the Ranger opening night roster. We will do that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can be. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you are also building wealth. We've all been there in the past. Expenses just kind of add up over time, and you do a couple of things with your family, and the next thing you know, you're looking at your bank account and wondering where all your money went. You go to a Ranger game, or you go on a vacation, you go out to dinner, whatever it might be. That can certainly happen to all of us. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off of your first year. All right, let's go keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Big shout out to the Everydayers as always. Going to be doing a crossover with Mr. Zach Martin of Locked On Canes in the next episode. Going to be talking about what else, that massive K'Andre Miller trade. He'll ask us some questions about Miller. We'll ask him a couple questions about Scott Morrow. It's going to be a lot of fun. Always enjoy doing the crossover episodes. But for right now, let's keep the focus on 31-year-old defenseman and recent New York Ranger free agent pickup, Derrick Pouliot. And right off the bat here, I feel like Sam Rosen here, but no relation to Benoit Pouliot. Benoit Pouliot was with the Rangers for one season when they went to the Cup final in 2014, but there is no relation. Derrick Pouliot is 31 years old, lefty shot. He went number 8 overall in the NHL draft to the Penguins all the way back in 2012. And now he signs a 2-year, two-way contract with the Rangers that is worth the league minimum of $775K. The fact that the Rangers offered him a 2-year deal is very, very likely what gave them a leg up on whatever competition there might have been for Pouliot, and I'll explain what I mean by that very shortly. But this is one of those signings. It feels very much like a pickup for organizational depth, one of those, fairly reliable NHL, AHL swingmen. He has played 226 games in the NHL and an additional 2 playoff games against 410 games in the AHL. So more time in the AHL than the NHL by a pretty comfortable margin there, obviously. Technically, he is a Stanley Cup champion. He was with the Penguins in 2016. His 2 career Stanley Cup playoff games occurred during that run, and they won the Stanley Cup that season. He played 22 regular season games with the Penguins. I don't think he contributed quite as much as, say, I don't know, Sidney Crosby, but he was there, and nobody can take that away from him. Derrick Pouliot is a Stanley Cup champion. I mentioned a second ago, NHL versus AHL. 226 NHL games, 410 AHL games. This guy has been everywhere in both the NHL and the AHL. So in the NHL, again, number 8 overall pick by the Penguins. So he was there for 3 seasons, 2 seasons with the Canucks, and then 1 season each with the Blues, the Knights, the Kraken, the Sharks, and the Stars. So if you're ever playing Immaculate Grid and you want an obscure player, just remember all those teams, and that'll work out pretty nicely for you. And the AHL, it's even crazier. He's played for even more teams. The Penguins, the Rampage, the Phantoms, the Silver Knights, the Barracuda, the Stars, and the Crunch. And that includes 7 different teams in the past 7 seasons in the AHL. So this guy is the definition of a journeyman. However, it must be said, he's also somebody that's built a reputation of being a pretty solid AHL defenseman. This past year with the Crunch was maybe his best season ever in the AHL. He was a member of the AHL's first All-Star team, also established new highs in career games played with 70. Again, these are AHL numbers. 70 games played, 46 assists, 53 points, 6 power play goals, 113 shots on goal. All of those are new career highs. And he also led all AHL defensemen in assists and ranked second among AHL defensemen in points this past season. So this guy's a heck of an AHL player. And all of this really paints the picture of somebody who can play in the NHL, but is more likely than not ticketed to play in the AHL, if we're being honest here. I get the feeling that the Rangers just see him as somebody that's going to be a solid, steady contributing member of the Hartford Wolfpack. He's not somebody that's going to come in here and instantly vault the Rangers to the Stanley Cup. It's possible he doesn't even play a game for the New York Rangers. He's on a 2-year deal. We'll see how it all unfolds. But this, to me, seems like one of those solid veterans that you rely on to kind of lead the way, hopefully in a leadership role for some of your young guys on your AHL team. And look, if there's a situation where some injuries hit or there's some ineffectiveness or a trade, whatever it might be, then this is somebody that if you promote him to the NHL, I think you got to keep expectations within reason, but he's got experience there, more than 200 games, and you plug him in as your 6th defenseman for a game or 2, I think you'll be okay. I think overall you could do a lot worse when it comes to, veteran NHL, AHL swingmen, certainly than Derrick Pouliot. So good pickup for what it is. Again, nothing earth-shattering, but I do like this pickup overall for the Rangers and especially for the Wolfpack. And in just a second, I'm going to keep everything rolling. I'm going to shift our attention to one of the Rangers draft picks. That's going to be Artyom Gonchar, a left-handed defenseman who's a little bit on the smaller side. One of the smaller defensemen that was available in this year's draft. But we're going to talk about him and what he brings to the table, and we will do that in just a second. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers by doing something that we do every offseason. We've already started it this offseason. We'll continue to go through this this whole routine here throughout the rest of the offseason here. But basically, we just take a look at every player that the Rangers drafted, try to assess them the best we can, talk about their strengths and their weaknesses. And today, we're into the 4th round with Artyom Gonchar. He was selected at number 89 overall by the Rangers. He was the 3rd player taken in this year's draft by the Rangers. Obviously, they did not have a first rounder. They took Malcolm Spence in the 2nd round, who I think is a very exciting high upside winger and maybe more than anything, a safe floor kind of winger as well. Really like that Spence pick. Then we also had Sean Barnhill, just a gigantic right-handed defenseman in round 3. And now Artyom Gonchar, another defenseman, but honestly, somebody who profiles is almost the exact opposite of Sean Barnhill, and that might be by design. We got our giant. Now we're getting our smaller offensive-minded defenseman in Artyom Gonchar, lefty defenseman as well, whereas Barnhill is a righty. But as far as the basics with Gonchar, 18 years old, 6 feet tall, and 165 pounds or 157 pounds. It depends which website you're looking at. I don't know if one article was written after the other and maybe he bulked up at least a little bit. But that obviously stands out. 6 feet tall, you're already on the smaller side a little bit when it comes to NHL defensemen, at least a little bit. But then when you look at the fact that he's either 165 pounds or 157 pounds, yeah, he's going to have to put on some muscle before he gets to the NHL. I think that's more than fair to say, and I'm sure he's very well aware of that as well. But like I said, one of the smaller defensemen available in this year's draft. As I mentioned, he is also a lefty shot. He spent the last 2 seasons in the MHL, 78 regular season games, 8 goals, 22 assists, 30 points, plus 10, also 6 postseason games, 1 assist, and was a -1. And we had some breaking news as of yesterday, Monday, right before I was going to record this. He has signed with the Sudbury Wolves of the OHL. So he is set to play for the Wolves in the 2025-2026 season, this upcoming season. He was also a first-round draft pick by the Wolves at number 29 overall. And this is what the vice president and GM of the Sudbury Wolves, Rob Papigno, had to say about Gonchar. Artyom is a player that we have been high on from this past season. He is a very intelligent, smooth-skating defenseman who was just selected in the 3rd round in the NHL. He has great vision and offensive instincts and is a skilled playmaker. He is a 19-year-old defenseman we targeted to fill minutes lost to key graduating players. We are excited to welcome Artyom and his family to Sudbury. And then Artyom Gonchar went on to say, I'm excited to sign with Sudbury and can't wait to start the season with my new team. So sounds like obviously highly thought of player being taken in the 1st round there. So that's obviously very nice to see. I think we mentioned this when we were talking about Sean Barnhill in our last episode or second to last episode, whatever it was, that the Rangers went very defenseman heavy in this year's draft. And I'm all for that. I didn't know that they would necessarily use 5 of their 8 selections on defensemen. I'm not so sure the Rangers even knew that either. Maybe that was the game plan going in, maybe not. Maybe at a certain point, you're just taking the best player available. But I do like the idea of the Rangers replenishing their blue line for the reasons that I mentioned in the past. Of course, that being that, a lot of those players on the Ranger blue line have some uncertain futures with this team. So it's nice that they kind of restock the cabinet a little bit. I realize that every defenseman that they drafted was in the 3rd round or later, but you hope that you hit on at least a couple of those, and these guys go on to become, solid, productive NHL defenseman. But as far as Gonchar goes, I'll read a couple of scouting reports here for you guys as well. This one comes to us from Elite Prospects 2025 NHL Draft Guide. Gonchar is capable of completing various types of passes, threading those precisely around opponents on breakouts. He prepares his feeds with skating, moves to open lanes, and misdirecting defenders. And he's also capable of deception at the offensive line, constantly activating. He freezes defenders with shot feints, attacks down, and relays passes to teammates or creates his own shots. And then we had this one from Neutral Zone. Gonchar is a quick and agile two-way defenseman. He rushed the puck up ice with confidence and joined the play deep into the offensive zone on multiple occasions. He was tasked with minutes on the first power play unit and snapped the puck around with intention. And then one more here from Dylan Griffin of Elite Prospects. The confidence that Gonchar possesses when passing the puck is awesome, and making it even better, he has the skill to back it up. So this is painting a very clear picture. This is somebody that is very, very obviously an offensive-minded defenseman. That's clearly the strength of his game, his puck handling, his passing, his ability to contribute offensively in various ways. That's all very, very apparent to these scouts, and I guess by proxy to us as well. The overall consensus seems to be that if everything goes well, Gonchar doesn't necessarily have a massively high ceiling, but he could be a productive, bottom 4 defenseman in the NHL. He's very agile, very mobile, excellent puck skills. And something that I read from multiple sources is that in terms of offensive defensemen with any kind of offensive skill, by the time we got to this point in the draft and the Rangers selected Gonchar, he was far and away the best offensive defenseman remaining. And I get the feeling that the reason for that, you connect the dots a little bit. Why is he the best offensive defenseman remaining? Well, because of his complete and utter lack of size. That's probably what caused teams to go after other offensive defensemen, obviously before Gonchar. And anybody that's worried about the Rangers drafted another undersized player, don't worry about it. This is the only player that the Rangers took in this year's draft who can possibly be considered undersized. Everybody else has at least, average to above average to gigantic size. So this is the only one that kind of bucked that trend. I think the Rangers just saw a chance to get the last good offensive defenseman available in the draft, and they pounced on it. And if that's what they wanted to do, then good for them. I think it's interesting that they went with the giant defenseman Barnhill, followed by obviously the smaller guy Gonchar. It's an interesting blend of picks that the Rangers have made through their first 3 selections of this year's draft, all of whom we've now covered. One other thing that you might be wondering, yes, he is related to Sergei Gonchar. Sergei played for the Caps, Bruins, Penguins, Senators, Stars, and Canadians. Final season was with Montreal in 2014-2015, 1,301 career NHL games, 811 points, also 90 points in 141 career Stanley Cup playoff games. So that's a name that I'm sure is familiar to a lot of you as well. And one more fun fact that I'll throw out there about Gonchar, this is the first Russian that the Rangers have drafted since Vitaly Krasov in 2018. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed and, hope it goes a little bit better than it did with Krasov. Honestly, it can't really go any worse because even if Gonchar never really amounts to anything, it's not going to hurt the Rangers as badly because he's a fourth rounder, whereas Krasov was a top 10 overall pick, and it was one thing after the next, and obviously it just never worked out between the Rangers and Krasov. Although some of you have pointed out, Krasov had a heck of a season in the KHL this past season. The KHL is not the NHL, but there are some rumors kicking around. He might be looking for, another chance with the NHL. We'll see what happens there. But if that does come to fruition, call me crazy. I don't think it's going to be with the New York Rangers. But be that as it may, we'll call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @jchick17. Once again, that's @jchik17. And definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.